Hello and welcome to our wretched hive of scallywags and reprobates.
Greetings!
Greetings.
Welcome, friend.
Nomen, how was your week
It was alright.
of being a stay-at-home dad?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Stay-at-home dad times are the best times.
It's good stuff, man.
Oh, you lost your A again.
I
That
did.
pesky A. Pesky B.
Wrong letter. But yeah.
So we are talking today about a melange
Something.
of bacchanalia and other things. So we can well, there was the coronation that happened next week. I'm sure you have some things to say about that. It happened, and we already had a king, so it's just more of a formality more than anything. But there were some interesting facts, like Charles Column in his video talked about how the chrism was actually a chrism that was consecrated by the Patriarch of Jerusalem. So
Yes.
it was legit chrism, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yes, it was. From what I've heard too, there was one of the participants in this was Orthodox. The other one was Catholic, in addition to all the Anglicans. So that's interesting.
And the bishopettes,
of course. Yeah, well, I mean, it's the Anglican Church.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, most people
Supposedly that was the last straw for his father, Prince Philip.
Oh, is that when he became Orthodox?
Gave up on the Anglicans and went back to the Greek Orthodox after that.
It's weird though because he still
Privately.
received communion at the at Anglican services, which doesn't seem like a thing that an Orthodox person would do.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you square that, but
Yeah. Such is
I mean,
the
English royalty are in a
royalty.
difficult position.
That it would be a difficult position, yeah. Well, most people probably didn't know that he was no longer Anglican.
Yeah, well, they also tend to keep things quite private.
Right.
Unlike Americans and American neophytes, Harry and Meghan,
I was gonna push you there, but
they don't publicly spread everything that they do all the time in a beautiful sort of like homage to a lack of restraint and decency.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Yeah, like it was kind of a lovely clip that you once showed me.
As a child, you see the world in a different way. You see the wonder in nature, and you're starting to which will be used in this video. Now, if the exercises on page 5...
this is like full of foul language, right?
Oh, is it? Oh. Okay, I guess we can't watch this.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't be posting this up.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Anyway, yeah, but they're the worldwide privacy tour, and then they're setting off fireworks, going respect our privacy, woo! And it gets into a vulgar shouting match with the neighbor. Yeah, that's about the
level of discourse.
The level of discourse, yeah, but I mean that's kind of the level of discourse that the two of them are at to begin with. So it's
yeah. Well, there's not much good news either to sort of share in the news. It seems like we have the judge orders the PA district attorney to allow the Pennsylvania district to allow after school Satan club meeting on school grounds, which is great.
That is so lame.
Yeah,
that's so lame.
And So the EU is Parliament is criticized for displaying vulgar depictions of Jesus and the apostles. I mean, you can't really. There's not really surprise there. But oh yeah, no, I don't want to see it.
No, I don't want to see it either.
Yeah, I didn't know there was going to be a picture of it. Why would they put that on a Catholic website? But anyways, but yeah, there's and then what else is there? Oh, that was actually a good thing. So the feds allowed a Catholic hospital to keep their sanctuary lamp on. Hooray!
Oh, how incredibly generous of them.
Yeah, I know. They give us so much. How can we complain? Our overlords.
Thank you for not beating me with a paddle today. This is a lovely change.
So the persecution
Religious freedom
in Nicaragua. Well, not Nicaragua. There's been apparently 90 attacks just this year on the church directly from the government. 529 attacks in the past 5 years. Yeah, but
you're telling me that Central American Freemasons don't like the Catholic Church?
Yeah, well, at least they care, though. That shows that they're probably doing something right. They haven't completely.
At least who cares? The Freemasons? What?
Yeah, the Freemasons care enough to actually persecute them.
Well, I mean, is that really what's going on there?
I don't know enough about it. Like my wife knows a little bit more since she's from that area, but it's.
I mean, what is going on there?
Oh, the U.S. bishops are condemning this. You know, they need to keep up their funding from the immigration department, so they're, you know, the nun, and they're saying, oh, don't build the wall, don't try and stop the catch and release protocol.
I mean,
everyone should be allowed.
I mean, who has the high ground in this debate, though? You know, like just kind of like pull yourself away from the two sides of this here, and just who really has the high ground here? I mean, America was just kind of. I mean, they did shoot the king, or shoot at the king's men to. Although these kinds of people were the same people who had Charles' head chopped off. Charles I. So I mean, you know, a blight upon humanity. The same kind of like psychotic Puritans who want to run their own affairs.
Sure, that actually that brings
and then they came to a country, and to the credit of the leftists who bring this up, they did take the land from someone who already had it.
It's true.
And then they have the audacity to be like, you can't do this. We already we took it. This isn't fair.
Yeah, I mean,
like, what do you mean it's not fair? It's a bit like the Saxons, you know, when their ancestors showed up in Britain and took all the land from the Britons. And then 200 years later, they decide to convert to Christianity. Very good of them. But 200 years later, they're being savagely pillaged by the Norsemen. They're like, it's not fair. They keep taking all our stuff.
Well, the right wingers say that it's part of this, like, you know, sex trafficking ring thing that's happening. I mean, I'm sure that some of that is happening, but I wonder how much of it's.
It's always happening. Yeah. It's always happening.
Yeah, but the government's orchestrating it. That they're actually intentionally allowing it to happen because they're vampires.
They're Okay, yeah. Okay, is that what we're?
I don't know. I don't know if that's. I don't know if it's the same people. I don't know if. I don't know if it's the same people who believe that, you know, that there's the Hollow Earth where the vampire sex traffickers operate, but it seems there's some spillover there. in the
the Venn diagrams just converge. It looks like
yeah, it does kind of, yeah.
It just looks like a bubble bath of
Yeah.
madness.
But that kind of it kind of actually relates pretty well to this this clip that I wanted to share from. This is one of the better episodes of Taylor Marshall, this podcast that I saw recently, when they're talking about when he's talking about the coronation with Charles Gloom here. So you can watch
I understand. He is the king. We fear the king. We submit to the king. These are Christian virtues. These are Christian teachings. We render unto Caesar. Even when Caesar is a pagan who worships idols, this is Christian teaching. This is the Catholic faith. Here's, I think, the difference. What troubles me is seeing Catholics, in particular, traditional Catholics. And by the way, for everyone out there, I went to Mass today. It's First Saturday Mass. And I offered my Mass intention for King Charles III. All right. I'm not in any malice here. I don't wish him any ill will. But I am troubled by seeing traditional Catholics, or Catholics in general, falling over themselves and celebrating this as sort of this monument to Christian monarchy. I can't imagine Saint Athanasius, the great Trinitarian doctor, rejoicing and celebrating and spilling his tea on himself over the coronation of an Arian monarch. To me, it is a penitential moment, not celebratory. What say you, Charles? Go for it.
Should I celebrate the 4th of July? You give me your answer and I'll give you mine.
Yes, you should. You should celebrate the 4th of July. The independence of our country. It's a good thing. The founding.
All right. I'll put it to you this way. Remember that independence was initiated by hatred of my people being given our religion. And remember that when they invaded Canada, the Americans forbade the Mass. General Worcester. If that was all there was to the story, I would say no. But of course, that's not all there is to the story, because a lot has happened since the year of our Lord, 1776. My family came down to the United States. We did very well in the United States. The country did well by us. And my grandfather, my father, my brother, and myself served in the armed forces. I love my country. But when I celebrate the 4th of July, and I celebrate it, I am not celebrating the hatred that the founding fathers had for my religion. That's not what I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating everything the country has become since. That's what I'm celebrating. You understand me?
Yes, of course.
I'm celebrating the country that welcomed us, the country that brought us all sorts of goodies. Now, when Catholics today celebrate the coronation of the king, they're really celebrating two things. One, they're celebrating governance above party, and an institution that has been part of the country for over 1,000 years. Again, that's a little hard for us because we haven't been around all that long. Still, it's hard to realize how that gets into your bones. But the second thing is that it's so much better than it was in terms of their relationship with Catholics. I told you about Edward VII. I neglected to mention he came into the church on his deathbed, didn't I? I neglected that, but he did.
Yeah.
Now, Padre Pio claimed that George V saved his soul. Well, I wasn't there, I don't know. But that's what Padre Pio said.
Oh.
The interesting thing, too, is that George V was euthanized. Not saying there was a connection, just saying, I don't know, I wasn't there. So every Sunday after High Mass in the traditional rite in England and elsewhere, they sing the Salvum Fac Regum.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, I agree with it.
Well, I do too, but there's more to it. I don't know a traditional Catholic around. And bear in mind, when you go to the British Armed Forces, and again, this is something I know little about going to armed forces. Well, very little. I mean, my time was during the 80s when the motto of the National Guard was "Sleep well, America."
All right, he's going on one of his tangents.
No, he does. He does go on those tangents.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of like the predominant thing. It kind of they clipped it in some of the things that I wanted to hear him talk about more. But because I thought the tangent actually around kind of the Quebec Act and stuff was pretty good because we were talking about that last week. And,
We were.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see what kind of comes of this this new king of ours.
Yes, indeed. I doubt it's going to be anything too radical, given
No,
his
I don't.
age and sort of his
Of course, yeah.
previous statements that are more recent. I think when he was younger, he had ideas, and I think those ideas have kind of passed now.
Right.
And what he really, I think a lot of the progressivism that you saw has passed into a desire for preservation. Just given the kinds of things that he's said about tradition and that sort of in its place in society. So we're in a very different place than we were in the 10 or 20 years ago. Just on the whole,
globally. Of course, yeah. It's
and it was being remarked to me as well. One of the interesting things that you see amongst Gen Z is they'll just plain decide, like amongst the women, they'll just plain decide, oh, I'm going to like dress and live like a pioneer farm girl, and then they'll go out and do it, and they'll kind of make a YouTube channel about it or something. But it's the kind of thing that was beyond the boomers, and I think that the Generation X kind of a little bit the sort of the subculture idea,
right,
really kind of picked up with Gen X, and then millennials even more so, the willingness to be kind of obnoxious, and now like Gen Z, but it's a complete grab bag. It's like someone over here is going to wear a 3-piece suit every day, and someone over there is decided that they're a Japanese cat girl, even though they're not, all that suited to be one. And that's kind of where we're at now. And so there is a segment of people, I think, that really are interested, though, in preservation, filthy restorationists, as the light from on high
shineth forth
upon our sign.
Yes,
but as the Holy Father has called us so lovingly, restorationism. Restorationists trying to restore the Mass, trying to restore the evil pre-Vatican II Church. Okay.
Evil.
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
No, that was a little bit of improv.
A little improv,
it's in the name. It's in the title.
Yeah. So there was
it will be interesting to see what he chooses to do. But I do think he'll be more vocal than the late Queen. And that's given his history of, for example, the goodness, what were they called? There was a series of letters. It was a big scandal.
Oh yeah, they talked about the black spider letters or something, or the spider
something like that. And it was
actually Charles Cologne was just talking about it the other day. I mean,
the series of letters where people were being ignored by their representatives of government, so Charles interceded on their behalf.
Right.
But I by the way, I'd recommend to anyone who's losing their traditional Latin Mass to the bishop in the country of England to write the king a letter and see if he can do something about it.
Yeah, actually, that's
because he's declared himself the defender of all faiths, so not just the Anglican Church. So that terrible ecumenism or whatever, but that could work out in our favor here. See, he could come and he could write a very strongly worded letter to your local bishop and be like, "Hey, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah, I know. And there's some of those Anglican bishops are just so intolerant of tradition. It's
Well, the English Catholic
incredible.
bishops,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're
But I mean, if I were them, and I'm not, but if I were them, I'd be writing the king. If I was losing my mass to some progressivist.
well,
dream.
why can't we write the king too? We're subjects of His Majesty.
I don't think that the bishops in Canada will care.
Yeah, that's sad, but
they're all pretty
Americanized.
The loyalty here is a little less
pronounced.
There's a little less of a knee-jerk reaction.
In Australia, there still is more of it's more polemicized. You know, there's some people who want to get rid of the Union Jack from their flag, and then there's others who are quite sort of British in their customs and mannerisms. Like they still have a lot of more direct cultural ties to British culture as well. Like they have the ashes annually on Christmas, and and they also sound more English, just in their dialect.
Yeah, but Canada's been so heavily influenced by the United States since the Second World War. It's deeply embarrassing.
Yeah, well, actually, but it was interesting after this kind of got scrapped during COVID, but there was an idea of sort of making sort of a new trade agreement between Brexit, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and the biggest proponents of it actually were the New Zealanders. They really wanted to see that. I don't think that I can imagine our Prime Minister wanting to sort of do anything for the Commonwealth. That doesn't seem to be within his purview.
Yeah, well, the apple doesn't fall very far from the rotten tree.
That's true. But there's another news. There's this is something that I wanted to share. I haven't actually seen this either, but it's apparently Pope Benedict appeared to a YouTuber and revealed the third secret of Fatima. So let's see this.
Hey everyone, Benedict's ghost came to me in a dream yesterday. He told me the truth about the third secret of Fatima. I'll reveal the secret later today and show that it details how Masons are taking over the city of Boston by hiding the truth about the 3 days of darkness, and that King Charles III was actually enthroned in the Vatican as the head of MI6 after the second beast of the Book of Revelation shows that Cardi B's lyrics predicted the great apostasy, and a recent apparition of Cardinal Pell exposed a communist plot to infiltrate the church by replacing Pope Francis with an imposter Francis, who is using the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the secret Vatican archives to usher in the reign of the Antichrist by Saint Gallimafia's worship of Pachamama. I'll also tell you about how green alien humanoid reptilians took over the Second Vatican Council and dogmatized Donald Trump's Luciferian interpretation of the Book of Revelation. So I really hope to see you later today for the show.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Man, good stuff. I was
1776. More than enough.
I think Michael Lofton would be a great Alex Jones persona.
He
just needs to embrace.
I was here. I was going to reveal to our viewership of one person who that in fact, Pope Innocent IV came to me in a vision and revealed that he was the last legitimate pope.
Oh, where is that? Is that visionary in our midst?
Yeah, I was going to reveal that was me.
Oh, that was you.
No. The other joke was going to be that we had an exclusive interview with the nun, and I was going to go get my cat, the one who saw Pope Benedict or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't feel like hunting down the cat right now. But what I do need to do is take a washroom break. So you need to be extra entertaining for the next minute.
Actually, I did want to show the viewer one of the beautiful dances of the most excellent Charles Column. So we can watch this now, viewer. It's a beautiful thing. I highly recommend this episode too, by the way.
Am I here?
Yes, you are here, but it's breaking up a little bit.
Axe on. Axe off.
Oh,
This is
so much
tedious.
about this.
Pentafence. Up, down.
I think the dancing's making it worse, Charles. I think the dancing is. I suspect someone is going to start making memes of Cologne dancing. It's going to be fun.
Fine by me.
Oh, he actually did make a meme. Wow, look at this. Beautiful. That was most excellent. So, oh, now it wants to bring up a video of Rivendell. No, we're not going to watch Rivendell ambient music for 3 hours. But we can discuss more news. Let's discuss this Eucharistic miracle, which is kind of interesting. So apparently, there might have actually been a Eucharistic miracle in Hartford. So I'll just read through this quickly. The Archdiocese of Hartford is appealing to the Vatican for guidance on how to proceed with its investigation of a possible Eucharistic miracle at St. Thomas Catholic Church. The truly present in the Holy Eucharist appeared to multiply himself in the ciborium. This happened in the same parish that Father McGinty, the leader of the Knights of Columbus, was. And at the conclusion of Mass, Father Joseph Crowley announced that a Eucharistic miracle witnessed something unexplainable happen as he was distributing communion. One of our Eucharistic miracle ministers was running out of hosts, and suddenly there were more hosts in the ciborium. God just duplicated himself in the ciborium, an emotional Crowley told the faithful. It's really, really cool when God does these things, and it's really, really cool when you realize what he's done, and it just happened today.
Is that the actual quote?
That's the actual quote, yeah.
It's really, really cool.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, man, that's so cool.
It's super cool.
Cool.
See what he says. What is he?
As we receive these glorious mysteries, we make thanksgiving. It comes in a weird way, in a mystical way, in a strange way. And one of our Eucharistic ministers, hard to say actually, it's God provides. And it's funny how God provides. And sometimes it comes in a weird way, in a mystical way, in a strange way. And
what is he got a band-aid on his thumb?
Ministers was running out of hosts, and yet they didn't. And suddenly there was more hosts in the ciborium. Just God duplicated himself in the ciborium. It's God provides. It's strange how God does that. And it happened, and it was noted by one of our Eucharistic ministers that was giving out communion to you guys today. It's really, really cool when God does those things. And it's really, really cool when we realize what he's done. And it just happened today. Very powerful, very awesome, very real, very shocking, but also it happens. It happens. And today it happened. Where they were running out of hosts, and all of a sudden, the more hosts just were there.
Yeah, it's what I find interesting is that usually, I mean, God, Eucharistic miracles usually happen in the context of liturgical abuse,
Disbelief.
Yeah, disbelief. Yeah.
Yeah. Take note. That's if you're getting one of those, that's not a good sign. That's a sign that you need to get it together. Perhaps get rid of the Eucharistic minister.
Yeah. Well, that happened. That happened in Tixla too. Like there was a Eucharistic miracle in the ciborium of a nun who is distributing Holy Communion.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, and then I mean, obviously she stopped because she saw that, you know, our Lord was manifested before her eyes, you know, even though he was always there. But yeah, I mean, usually they're not really. It seems like they're not really received well. But I mean, I guess like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't like. It seems like the ones in sort of like late antiquity and like the Middle Ages were sort of received better, because there was the doubt from the priest in the miracle in Munciano, and also in Orvieto. You know, then both times the priest was doubting the real presence, and and that's when the appearance of bread and wine were removed, the accidents.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, we can't really read into it too much either. Like, I mean,
no.
yeah.
But it is almost always in a situation. Miracles tend to occur when people aren't paying attention and they need to learn to pay attention.
Yeah.
So that should be a heads up. And
We're not theologians either. That's always like the
I'm
caveat.
not a theologian. I'm saying that as a kind of historian.
Yeah.
One thing to the other thing. That's what it tends to be. And
Yeah.
the other thing I have to say is, my goodness, that is the worst capacity for delivering. What an undignified way of.
Cool.
Really cool. It's, you know, it's kind of weird, you guys. Hey guys, a cool thing happened. You know, it's kind of weird, but like the all-powerful, omnipotent, and omniscient first principle of all things, who exceeds being in his very being, he can make more hosts. You know, he created the universe. It's you know, it's crazy. It's you know, you don't think that's a thing, but then it happens.
Yep.
I apologize. The spring has not been kind to my nasal passages.
Mm-hmm.
But do they not? I know that the answer to this, but do they not teach people how to speak correctly when they go to the seminary? Like, my goodness.
No, of course not. Yeah.
That's terrible. What an undignified way to speak about the holy mysteries. Like, ugh. Just.
Oh, you're so judgy.
I am judgy. That was awful. That was an awful experience.
Just watching that delivery.
This is why, by the way, like, a bunch of trads are so keyed up about King Charles, because if you listen to him talk, he doesn't talk like an idiot. I didn't mean to say that priest was an idiot, but he's certainly not speaking in a way that someone who has dignified patterns of speech would speak.
Yes.
You know, you could modify that bit from My Fair Lady slightly. Why don't the Americans teach their children how to speak?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Come on. You have to study theology. America, the beautiful.
The beautiful.
But you have to teach. They learn theology, and you learned about the mystery of the Eucharist. And come on, you have to have something be like, oh, you know, it was kind of crazy,
Zazzy,
you know?
yeah,
Cool.
cool.
Weird. Like,
Yeah,
there was
weird.
some zazz to it.
Yeah.
What?
Sassafras.
I don't know. That's I don't know. That bothers me.
Yeah, I think what he's saying at the beginning too is like was just kind of. Actually, I do kind of want. I know it was painful, but I kind of wanted to see that again, because what he was saying, kind of like that, kind of might have been part of the reason why there was a Eucharistic miracle. He was talking about how our Lord. Well, I mean, I just want to make sure he actually was saying this before I actually.
Yeah, play it
do
again
this
before we
different
stick our
dissertants.
foot in our
Yeah,
collective
exactly. Yeah,
mouths.
yeah. I think I will here. Yeah. Just at the beginning.
Well, thanks for staying with us. The investigation continues into a possible Eucharistic miracle in Connecticut. The Archdiocese of Hartford is looking into claims made by a priest in Thomaston, Connecticut. He says a Eucharistic minister reported running out of hosts before having the tribarium suddenly replenished late last month. So, what goes into these types of investigations and how frequently?
No, and we're not likely until it's completed. We probably hear more information than that.
Who's this guy?
And he's trying to.
I would like to mention that she called it a chibarium.
Facts of the case.
In the chibarium, just.
Hee haw.
So who is this guy? Okay, here we go. Colin, he's the vice president of theology of EWTN.
Okay. He started a preliminary investigation committed with respect to these hosts. So I'm sure no evidence per se of a miracle there.
Oh, this is a different. Oh, this is. I was just talking to this guy the whole time. No,
that's great. I love that. That's perfect. That's not. That makes for great podcast. That's what that is.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Okay, so he's. Oh, what?
Something happened.
Something happened here.
It's hard to say, actually. It's God provides, and it's funny how God provides. And sometimes it comes in a weird way, in a mystical way, in a strange way. And one of our Eucharistic ministers.
Okay, no, there wasn't anything. He wasn't talking about he wasn't talking about the Eucharistic presence. Just was. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, just kind of like it's a weird, mysterious way.
Oh man, it's kind of hard to say this, but our religion has miracles occur on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I just
it's not. We don't have to pretend to be Presbyterians and be like, oh, the miracles only happened in the Bible days. Like, they really do happen all the time. So maybe not act weird. What are they going to run you with pitchforks? Like, oh, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but I think there was a miracle. And it's that attitude mixed with the complete and utter incapacity to speak about it in a dignified manner is precisely what's wrong with the Novus Ordo and the way in which their priests are trained and formed. Like this mindset, like, the thing actually happened. Oh my goodness. And
I don't know if it's precisely
super cool, fantastic,
I think it's
amazing.
I think that's kind of one part of what's wrong with it. I don't think that encompasses the whole of what's wrong with it, because there's obvious.
I said precisely what's wrong, but I didn't mean I didn't mean exhaustively what's wrong.
Sure.
There's other problems, John. There's other problems that we don't even need to get into.
No, because that could be an episode in itself. I mean, we could get into them. I mean, what else are we going to talk about?
All the things that make me angry about Ordo.
Yeah, just make
Volume
a list.
78.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think I've talked in previous episodes about my experience in the seminary. So I was a seminarian for our local diocese for 3 years, and it was it was a mixed experience for sure. But it was that does sort of the whole sort of our whole exchange sort of reminds me of the homiletics course that I was given when I delivered sort of like something that resembled a traditional homily, and I got like a 65% on it. It was like basically a failing grade, just because it didn't engage the people. You just had to. So I had to use some sort of like allegory to explain the first chapter of John, instead of talking about you know the instead of talking about the exegesis of what actually is happening in the text. I have to create like a fancy illustration. And so I talked how about how photos are developed, and that it's sort of that what's happening in the first chapter of John is in a sense, is sort of a negative image of what happens at the nativity in Bethlehem, which I thought actually is actually a good illustration. But I mean, but I just don't think that there needs to be that. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, we've got some accompaniment.
Yeah, I've got a small child. He's very excited.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Is she doing her baby talk?
Yeah, she's delivering your typical Novus Ordo homily, but a little more coherent.
More.
I find that every time that the clergy has done the whole like engage thing, it's been terrible. For
Yeah,
me.
it's usually really bad.
It's usually really bad, and it's also you are going to lose anyone with like something above a junior high level of literacy. They're going to kind of fall off.
Well, and also you're always going to be
then
appealing to a certain crowd of people, because as soon as I started talking about how photos are developed, like some of the people, like really, I could see what was happening in people's level of attention who are sort of in the audience. Like there's some people who really sort of switched in. It's like, oh, this is fascinating. He's talking about the chemistry of photo development from like like back in the days when we used to have actual film photography, and then some other people just completely switched off. They're just like, oh, this is so boring. I mean, I tied it back to the theme, but it just was, yeah. I mean, it's just it's dumb because you're never gonna come up with like an image that's gonna appeal to everyone.
No, and
yeah.
I mean, the most important thing is to illustrate the text.
Yeah.
To get the point of it across. And
I just don't know why we sort of have to feel that we need to be novel.
Well, because that's what the Protestants tend to do, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, for those who don't know, Protestant church is like some praise and worship followed by an hour-and-a-half long sermon.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, I was from mainline Protestantism, and so we didn't have praise and worship, but we'd have like, so now it's time for our senior choir to sing "How Great Thou Art."
Yeah, so it's a bit of a stage though, followed by like a really long homily.
Yeah.
And maybe
we had communion.
Maybe, yeah, we had every so often they would do their version when they call the Lord's Supper, where they bring out the shot glasses of grape juice and the cubes of Wonder Bread.
Right.
And yeah, that's silly. And
you could take wine or grape juice. That was in our church. So if you had
it's
grape juice,
just like being in the Chinaculum. It's amazing. It's as though I've been transported miraculously 2,000 years ago into the upper room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, let's take a second for that mystical vision that I had to really dissipate. But a lot of these homilies, like, my goodness, the talk about having your intelligence insulted. I mean, I once had a priest claim that our Lord had invented the Marxist dialectic or something. That was interesting. And
what?
Well, because you have heard, but truly I tell you, is how the Marxist dialectic works.
What?
Nice, good job. Insulting to anyone with above a junior high level of education.
Was that at university?
No. This was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was terrible. I had a bad time with it. Yeah,
how is that? I mean, I don't even know how did they tie
clerical
that together?
education.
Yeah,
the lack of clerical education relative to the laity was one of the things that really poured fuel into the whole Reformation. And I know that a lot of these clergy think, like, yeah, man, that'd be great. Like the V2 tie-dye crew are like, yeah, cool, but you won't get paid anymore because you don't do anything. What?
Wait, get paid anymore if you don't?
If we all just decide that it's cool and we don't have to go to mass, and why is this priest about? Well, who pays his salary anymore?
Yeah,
I don't understand where they think their pension plan is coming from, but it's not going to come from. If everyone leaves, it's not going to come from them. So I don't know why these these sort of boomer like novice guys with the halcyon days of yore, why they're so obsessed with like ecumenism. Because if we were all Protestants, they wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe they'll think that
the congregation that like they wouldn't like in a Protestant church, the congregation chooses the pastor.
It's true, yeah.
So like if they don't like your preaching, you're out.
You're out. Yeah.
Feed your family with something else. Man, wouldn't these guys be excited not only to not make any money, but also be responsible for other human beings in a very real and visceral way for once, instead of just this ethereal notion they have that like maybe they should be nice to grandma or something, because like these types don't have any notion of like pastoral care in the Gregory the Great sense. They're just like, oh, I was just gonna be nice to Grammy over here and make sure she has a good euthanasia suicide, and then everything's fine.
Oh, well, I mean,
hold her hand while it's happening, and everything's nice, and there'll be puppies and rainbows afterwards. But if like
that's certainly not
I'm not claiming that the priest.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, but unfortunately, it's not an exaggeration for some of our clergy. Like in the Maritimes, the bishops of the Maritimes actually permitted the last rites to be given to euthanasia patients. Like, it was horrible.
I mean, it's so odd because they think like, oh, this is so good. It's like, well, but then what are you going to do? Like, you're fired.
Yeah, I guess
they owed their continued pay to the fact that we can't just, as a congregation, get rid of them.
Well, I know, but I guess there is a they're floating on the fact that in Canada we have a lot of immigrants, which are filling the pews. But how much longer is that going to go for? I mean, because the immigrants is like they don't, they are coming, like at a rapid pace. But I mean, most of them end up joining sort of the secular wayfare within a few years. I mean, the Filipinos, for instance, they're level of mass attendance goes down significantly after they've been integrated into the country for several years. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a few. Some of them are pious and they end up staying, and that's kind of what's kind of keeping the church afloat. But I mean,
well, I mean, I've just gone off on a rampage, but a very certain type of cleric. But in general, like there's a smaller group of the more extreme ones. Like I was caricaturing the ones who would very much approve of everything that violates the principles of the Catholic faith.
oh yeah.
And then there's a larger group of them who are like, ugh, but also like, ugh, like they don't want to really do anything. And then there's another group of them, a significantly sized group of them, to which I would assume that the rather inarticulate priest, the clip that we watched of him, I would just assume out of charity that he's in the group of people who are the group of clergy who are relatively clueless and have been badly formed.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not their fault. Like, best of intentions, they can have the best of intentions.
Yeah.
I'm complaining about the system that I'm complaining about a system and a number of people who have let them down. They're not what they could be. They could be so much better than they are. They could be swinging upon a star. But, you don't want to grow up to be a mule.
Yeah.
But they're not, because they were cheated out of what they could be. They could be articulate. They could be better preachers. They could be better. They want to be good pastors. They could be good at it if they'd been given the correct training.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could go into a whole spiel about the state of seminary, since I've experienced it firsthand. I mean, the big problem is that they really do feel beholden to sort of even good seminaries to give them sort of a not only sort of an understanding of the tradition that's been handed on to us, but what has been developing in the post-conciliar church. And so the efforts are very quickly divided. And you have and then you have, and you have some good formators, but then some, really bad formators. And this is kind of the situation in most of the seminaries.
Yeah.
But then also, like, it's hard to give information to, and this is a problem too, even for traditional seminaries as well. It's hard to give information to young men who have grown up in a society where they're not taught to be virtuous. So human formation has to be a big part of it as well.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. And if you think about the number of things that, let's say 400 years ago, that your average candidate would enter a seminary with, if he had gone to a Jesuit school, he would know Latin and Greek by the time he left high school.
Sure, yeah.
Enough Latin that he'd be able to read Cicero hanging upside down from the monkey bars in the dark. I'm serious.
Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah.
I've done a bunch of research on the way that the Ratio Studiorum of the Jesuits worked, and starting in junior high school. By the time you were in your first year of high school, you'd be reading Cicero, Quintilian, Virgil. My goodness, if you look at it, was a high school level competition. Pope Leo XIII was educated by Jesuits who had hid out in Russia under Catherine the Great and then returned after the suppression was over. He was in a competition. He was required to, it was a competition to compose Latin verse in meter. He composed 500 lines of Latin verse in meter. Wow. In the required amount of time to recite in front of the judges, which was not a lot of time.
Yeah.
500 lines with what, 5, 6, 7 words a line of coherent poetry, not prose. The thing fits into the like dum da da dum da da dum da da, like it fits into a meter.
Yeah.
Like arma verum quecano troia primo saboris. Like it fits into a meter. All your grammar is solid, and it tells a story in like what, an hour or two?
Yeah, I mean, he was quite exceptional as a student.
He was quite an exceptional guy, but I bet you the other kids could do like 10 or 20 lines.
Sure, yeah.
Which is more than we can expect from anyone who enters the seminary now.
Oh no, yeah, no. I mean, not even after graduating. I mean, but unfortunately, I mean, there's very few who have kind of the even the initial incentive to learn. I mean, we were offering it at the seminary, and there was, me and 3 other guys who actually had, kind of the wherewithal to actually do some Latin, so just too bad. I mean, it should be mandatory. I mean, because it's required in canon law, but I mean, they're trying their best. I mean, but yeah, but like we were like, we were reading St. Thomas in Latin. We were just kind of working through, the first few questions of the Prima Pars, and you're knocking off 2 sort of you're knocking off 2 of the requirements of canon law for seminary formation at once, which was because that was about the only St. Thomas I studied as well when I was there, unfortunately.
Way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's yeah, I mean, kind of it's the state of the world that we're living in. I mean, that's probably a lot more than most seminaries have as well in North America, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say on it, just besides all of the rants that I've already given. But it does rob the faithful of a number of goods that they could be provided, and in some cases, the desire to learn on your own does not make up for the lack of effective teachers.
No.
It's very difficult to learn undirected, even for the best of those who are able to do so. It is an incredibly difficult and arduous process. And so they often end up with deficient educations, which have gaps in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the seminaries, I mean, they were originally designed to prevent. The reason we have seminaries is because before we had seminaries, before the Council of Trent, we were having some issues. Because sometimes you would get really smart members of the clergy who had university education. They knew several languages. Amazing guys. Guys in like the 13th century who knew Greek. I believe Robert Grosseteste, who was the Bishop of Lincoln, he knew Greek. I can't remember if Peckham knew Greek as well. There's a number of English bishops who knew Greek, to whom Roger Bacon had dedicated his Greek grammar. In an age when the knowledge of Greek was actually very, very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys were insanely well educated for their age. But then you had, priests who were borderline illiterate.
Yep.
So but the people were pretty illiterate too. I mean, for a long time in English courts, until the 14th century, so until the 1300s, you could basically, if you committed a crime, if you could prove you were literate, you could get tried by a church court, because they were like, you've got to be in the clergy if you know how to read.
Yeah.
Right, because lay literacy was so rare, so they'd either know who you were and be like, you don't have holy orders, get out of here. Like, if you're like, okay, he must be a member of the clergy because he knows how to read. And so I think in the 14th century, they made a rule. They're like, okay, you get that once, but then we're going to brand you. And then we'll know fool me twice, then we send you to a secular court. If you commit another crime, we're going to get you.
Check this out, y'all. Read a book, read a book, read a book, read a book.
It's the moral of the story.
It's important. Literacy is important.
I think you like that because it has a harpsichord in it as well.
Is that a harpsichord? Is that supposed to be a harpsichord?
I think it is. Yeah, that's
a synthesized harpsichord.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also they've ripped off Beethoven's Fifth.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah, but it's yeah. I mean, the reality is we live in a time too when there's just so many resources available to us, but we just don't have. So many people don't have the direction or sort of even the capacity to know where to start. So where's the place to start, Nomen? What's like where should a person, if you give a list of the first 5 books a person who wants to educate themselves in, what are you going to direct them to? You're going to direct them to some
first I would like to do a brief defense of the clergy and the seminarians who are trying but don't have much time. They are forced to do a lot of stupid things that are pointless instead of learn. And there's a lot of like not important paperwork and other engagements which they are given, which prohibits them from learning. So say a prayer for them, because the poor fellows have a hard time. Like, my goodness, you know, some people complain about the clergy being lazy or something, but I like those of them who are conscientious end up doing way too many things, and they need to there needs to be time made for them to actually engage in the intellectual life, which is why the first thing that everyone should read should be Leisure, the Basis of Culture by Joseph Pieper, which is an excellent book which will teach you about philosophy and engaging in philosophy and why you should make time for contemplative pursuits. And if you get the version, there's a version that's available right now that has the Philosophic Act, another essay by the great thinker, which again will have more to say about that, the Philosophic Act.
I think as a caveat, I think that just if you get that book, you know, just work through the things, just keep reading it. Don't get hung up if you don't know who Immanuel Kant is, because he'll talk about, you know, these philosophers that you might not know, and it doesn't really matter. The main
Wikipedia is your friend.
Or look up a quick Wikipedia, but don't necessarily get dragged down by.
You don't have to get into the weeds. Just take what he says at face value.
Yeah.
Another important book is Certelange. Is the intellectual life? I think it's the intellectual life. Sertillanges, Certelange. French Dominican. He will tell you many important things. Among them, to learn Latin and then start to read St. Thomas in Latin. There's a number of things that you can use to learn Latin. There is a half decent course set up on beware the classical pronunciation, but there is a half decent course set up on Duolingo. There's other sites, I think, such as Latinium, that will help. Again, beware the classical pronunciation. And I think there's a number of other resources out there, but I mean, my basic training in Latin is from a decade ago, so I don't really know what's available now.
The SPQR app is good. You have to kind of go into it's no longer sort of it's not updated for the latest version of Android, so you have to kind of look through the place. You have to kind of like you have to actually look it up through Google, because you can't find it immediately at the Play Store, and take the link through Google to get to the Play Store to download it. But it's a really good app, and it actually has a lot of Latin text in there that you can actually read, and it's nice because they'll give you the for every word they'll give you the grammatic etymology on it as well as the definition if you click on each word. And then it also has like kind of the Allen and Greenock Latin guide in there, as well as many other books on learning Latin. So I recommend the SPQR app. All right. So what other books are we going to recommend our minute audience? Just, I mean, I think some classics would be a good recommendation as well. Like, I mean, I think that would the Meno, like, you know, be a good.
The thing with Plato is he can be kind of difficult to wrap your head around what the point of the thing is.
But you need to start engaging these things.
You
at
should
some
engage.
point.
You should
Yeah.
engage. I mean, the Meno. My first Platonic dialogue. I was 16. I read the Republic, and it blew my mind. And if you
Yeah,
don't
that's
really,
true. Yeah.
no, I'm serious. And if you don't
Yeah.
know anything about Plato or philosophy, like, hit up the Republic. It's
Sure.
an amazing book. Like, you forget after years and years of studying philosophy, you forget just how great of a book it is, how good an experience of reading it is. If you really like that, just the way Socrates just gets to the core of it, and really like the dialectical argument. It's so good. It's such good stuff. But you have to be patient with it. But don't expect easy answers with that one. On the other hand, fourth, get yourself a good manual, something by like maybe say Koren, Koren, or Klubertons. We recently featured his book on human nature. You could also get something like his book on being. And George Klubertons was a Jesuit back when they were doing some good work. He was one of the good Jesuits, not a bad Jesuit. And his book, something on the philosophy of animate nature, is that the name of the book? It was. It's classroom tested and engages with the current psychological literature in the 1950s. And he has a couple books on. I think he has one or two books on being, on the philosophy of being, which will give you your metaphysics. Same thing, engaged with the discussion at the current time, very approachable, great footnotes, classroom tested. He taught university students. This is for people with high school kind of level of education, like maybe a little advanced for people now, but like high school level of education, you'll pick up on it. He's good at explaining things. You need to get yourself a good manual. You can't just like dive into Plato and Aristotle without a guide. That's the thing. If you can't get a living, breathing guide, if you're not lucky enough to get yourself a living, breathing guide who really knows what Plato and Aristotle are talking about, George Klubertans, 100% recommended.
Yeah, it's true. Because when I read Plato and Aristotle, I did certainly had guides to help me. But yeah, I actually would probably recommend on Christian Doctrine by St. Augustine as a good book to dive into as well. I remember we were told to read that book in my scripture class, and we had like 2 days to read it, and I think I was the only one who read it. But it's actually it's good, and actually I don't think that book should provide too many obstacles for people, because it's just straight theology. It's just it'll be familiar to anyone who has some faith formation. So
yeah, there's a lot of patristic volumes that are really good for that.
But it kind of puts your foot in the door into the classical world as well.
That's really important, is the kind of that shift
into
thinking that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've got any other recommendations from.
I mean, I think I already had my my liberal arts education when I read the Constellations of Philosophy. So that'd probably be one that you want to read a little bit later.
Yeah, that comes after you. You got to have a little philosophy first to really feel the constellation.
Yeah.
They it's more about getting your getting really involved in that the great philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
And then of course the great theological discussion.
Are there any sort of like philosophy sort of histories of philosophy that you would recommend? Like I've never tried reading Copleston's, but
I got up to the Descartes and then I just kind of lost interest in what was going on.
What happens after that? But was that helpful? It's pretty basic.
It is. I mean, so I've given you a list of like 4 or 5 like books, right, to kind of dip your toes in. But I mean, what I did when I was in universities, I would just take out books from the library that have stuff that I thought was interesting. Like, so for example, like Dylan's book on Middle Platonism, guys like Plutarch and Albinus and Antiochus of Ascalon and all those that cast of cool cats. They were really like it was like the Rat Pack of the 2nd century AD. No, and just getting really interested in kind of dig into the weeds, see what you really like, you know, like you're like maybe I want to just check out what Philo of Alexandria has to say. No, I'm serious.
That come up in the podcast before when we had that logos discussion.
Or you might want to be like maybe I'll read Eusebius of Caesarea. By the way, very enjoyable histories.
Oh,
good
sure,
stuff.
yeah.
Life of Constantine, lots of fun. The preparation of the gospel, good thing to read. Or just like I just like wander around and then I found this weird book with a bunch of weird geometric symbols on the front. I'm like, did I just find a spell book in the philosophy section? But it turned out to be a book on Neo-Pythagoreanism in Renaissance literature. It was a great book. I had a great time reading that whole thing. I just yeah, it was so cool.
Wow.
Just find some cool books and read them, you know? And that's that's the most exciting thing about if you really get good with your Latin is you can read so many exciting things that haven't even been translated.
Yeah, it's true.
And they're more cool when they're in Latin. It's weird, you know, it's weird, but it's cool at the same time.
My Latin isn't great by any means. It's really quite elementary, but reading St. Paul is actually a lot easier in Latin. Like it lends itself more to that sort of like to classical sentence structure. Like it really it's sort of his ideas just come through a lot more clearly because you're not sort of like because you're expecting to sort of like with the verb conjugations, like they just sort of like you don't have to kind of like read the whole sentence to sort of like grasp the idea, you know, that kind of the verb is the verb's already there kind of at the beginning of the sentence, and you know sort of kind of what he's going to be talking about before it's over.
I'm often so impressed by what I read. I'm like, did I read this as an evangelical? This was amazing. And then I like kind of look at the English.
He just seems so much
like,
more.
Yeah, I kind of remember that, but it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me like that. It hits you different when it's in Latin.
He seems way more Catholic too. Like it just seems, it's.
But you look at the English, you're like, well, yeah, I mean that's what it says, of course, but
yeah.
It doesn't impress itself upon you in the same way. And that's one of the great things about learning Latin. And really, like, I would get so excited in university. I'd be like, my Latin wouldn't be very good, but I would go and look at all the books that were in Latin and like want to read them so badly. It's just so exciting. I'm so excited about books. Books are very exciting. Is once you get involved in the intellectual life, you know what else everyone should have to read if they're an English speaker, if you're a native English speaker? The Life of Samuel Johnson. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
It's a great book.
You've plugged this many times.
It is a great book.
Wait, so who's the author then? Is it an autobiography?
This is embarrassing. Boswell, James Boswell.
Oh, Boswell, yeah. Wasn't he a close personal friend of?
Yeah, he was a close personal friend
yeah.
of Dr. Johnson. So it's all like his life story and his table talk and all the kind of characters around it. It's a really entertaining biography of someone no one really knows anything about in the modern world for the most part.
Yeah,
and he wrote the first English dictionary.
Yeah,
and he wrote a number of other things. He was a very eloquent writer, and he was very talented. And he has very interesting things to say. And it's a very good book to learn. I mean, and as a child, he did the same thing. His father was a bookseller. So a bookseller back then would get the books from the printer and would sell them and would commission them from the printer and all that sort of thing.
Right. And he impressed a bunch of his future teachers when he...
At Oxford, he
talked about
didn't
Macrobius.
finish his degree, but he was talking about Macrobius, and Macrobius is not part of the standard schoolboy curriculum. Horace and Virgil and Caesar, and that would have been. So if someone was like, "Oh yes, as Caesar says, blah 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 blah," oh as Horace says, blah 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 blah, and then like he came in and said, "You know," and Macrobius says this, and they all kind of turn their heads. Sort of, it's important to, and this is one of the great pitfalls of the great books programs sometimes fall into is the students only ever read these books.
Right.
You need to go out and read
other books
that everyone else may have passed by or not given the time of day to. And the real joy of the intellectual life is
even sometimes bad like once you have a basic formation, even sometimes like bad books are worth like a passing glance just to kind of like for amusement. Like I actually was in my modern philosophy class, I ended up writing a paper on the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre, and so I read actually some pretty large portions of Being and Nothingness, and it's just so bad. It's actually really funny because he basically just inverts Aristotelian ontology. Like he just like it's not original. He's just trying to be like this, old pervy edgelord. And
well, you can often learn things from people who are even lessons that they're not intending to teach you. They can teach you, and that's one of the interesting things about learning is you can often learn things from people that they're not really intending to teach you, and that's probably what happened with Aristotle with Plato, and that's definitely what happened with Thomas Aquinas with Aristotle. Like Aristotle never foresaw a lot of the things that Thomas does with Aristotle's philosophy.
Right.
And Aristotle, I mean, there's an old legend that Aristotle was so saddened by the death of Plato that he would daily beg the prime mover and first cause of everything to end his life so that he could be with his teacher once again.
Oh, really?
Huh. He would weep often, apparently, but but we love Plato, but we love our friend. We love Plato, but we love the truth more, right? And that knowing that it takes on a bit of a more intense characteristic. But a lot of what he does with things like substance and foreshadowed in Plato's notion of ideas, and he may have learned some lessons from his teacher that his teacher didn't intend.
Yeah.
And that's part of learning as well. I've learned a number of very salutary things from more or less like unbelieving scholars of different stripes, like Ernest Renan, who doesn't seem to have believed much that the Catholic Church taught about the tradition of Scripture. He has a number of interesting things to say, and I've learned a number of interesting things from reading him. Same thing with Protestant biblical scholars. I've learned a number of interesting things from reading them.
Very interesting. So I won't play the read a book meme again, but read a book.
But you should all go read books. They're fun.
Yeah.
Books are fun.
I should put on Reading Rainbow. Maybe I should get that. Maybe not the DMX remix, but All right. Good night, everyone. And remember,
you shall receive your reward in purgatory.
good night, everyone.